Meghan, no plans to... We don't know whether she's seen her father or she hasn't seen her father, or whether it's dressed up or whatever. I mean, I've long ago made my mind up about her. I don't even know what we're talking about.
We do know now. She's never going to come and see her father. That's her main thing. She's a disgusting human being. The fact is, she said that it's going to be too expensive. She can't get a pass. Yes, and they won't pay for her, so it's much too expensive. Her excuses are beyond anything you could imagine. So that's why, poor woman, you know, she always makes herself to be the victim, and here she is again, you know, poor me, I can't afford that sort of money. Also, the thing that really annoys me when she spoke about Caroline Graham, who is a journalist, but who is a very good friend of her father's, and she's incredibly annoyed that he spoke to her, and saying this breaching clear ethnical bounder means that nobody should talk to anyone unless she gives permission.
Well, of course the guy's going to reach out, because he's done it before, because his own daughter won't give him the time of day, because he's frustrated and he's worried about his health. She's just... Listen, you know what, Angela, sometimes I don't even have the energy to talk about how utterly narcissistic and appalling the woman is.
I do. I will keep on about her because I think she's just revolting.
Brilliant. Great news. The King over the weekend saying that his cancer battle is not over, but is looking positive, which is great, because I for one thought he was iller than perhaps he's given out.
Yes, it's extremely good. And the way he has handled it, not sort of moaning and groaning about himself, but trying to talk to people, to say he understands them. He's been to lots of hospitals, worked for lots of charities, and actually having say the big thing is to go early, go quick, don't wait. And 100,000 people have been since he gave that talk on Friday. Can you imagine? It's absolutely wonderful of him. I do know that he was going to do this, and Camilla, his wife, was anxious that it wouldn't go down well at all, and she wasn't sure that she agreed with him, when usually she agrees with most things in his professional life. And you know, there he is. He's been extremely popular.
Oh, I think that touches the people. I think when somebody like him talks about something as awful but as important as cancer, I think it's a very strong thing. This whole thing with what happened in Bondi and unfettered men coming into this country and crimes, Labour admitting overnight that this is a real shock, Tony, don't fall off your chair. Their small boats plan is not working as we hit 40,000 migrants crossing the Channel this year. How many times have we had this conversation? Surely, my friend, the pull of the United Kingdom is too bloody great, isn't it?
Yeah, Jeremy, I told you I was head of Border Force, but I worked as an immigration officer in that department, you know, Border Force for 40 years, man and boy. And I just wanted to get the message across to your listeners that we did used to send them back, Jeremy, in the 70s and the 80s, well after the 1951 conventions were signed. Nobody claimed asylum, nobody claimed human rights. I had the power as an immigration officer to detain and deport. And we need to get back to the future, really, on this. We've just allowed these international conventions to permeate into our legislation, into a huge lobby of immigration lawyers, courts, at various levels, right the way up to European Court, which has basically stymied our capability to detain and deport. And that's really something we should be able to overcome, but it will require really bold political leadership. Someone needs to unpick this morass of legislation, judgments and so on, and even look at our constitution, Jeremy, to deliver what most people want, which is to stop this, detain all of those people and send them back. It can be done. It was done in the past, well after the 1951 conventions, by people like me, and I'm getting on a bit now. I just want to get that message out there to everybody. This is possible, but it's going to take major surgery. We ain't seen that from this government or from the last government. They both say we'll do whatever it takes, but they're not doing whatever it takes.
Somebody said to me the other day, you spout reform and reform could make a difference. That's to be proven or not proven. I don't understand the lack of will. I'll tell you what the British people, and you're right on it, Tony, The British people of whatever political persuasion are at the point where they've been asked to do an awful lot for many, many years, and I think they've always done it willingly. But right now, the coffers are empty, and right now, life is hard. And for all the do-gooders who go, yes, but it's not Eritrea. No, it's not. It's the United Kingdom, where people are struggling to make ends meet. And when they see unvetted people coming here and being treated better than the indigenous population, you've got a problem, haven't you? Of course you have.
Yeah, and on unvetted, I also was gold commander for the border security for London 2012 Olympics, Jeremy, and something I can't talk too much about, but I do know it takes a long time to vet people properly, thoroughly, and we're bringing people off those boats and pushing them through Manston within 24 hours. That's not long enough. We need to be able to detain them for at least a week, probably 2 weeks, if nothing else. Thoroughly investigate their background, their antecedents, use the best technology that's out there for data mining and whatever. They're all on social media, so we can mine that. There's lots we could be doing, Jeremy. I haven't got a lot of time. There's lots we could be doing, but we must have those powers to detain them and not to get done in the courts for illegal detaining people because we have pushed them through. We haven't stuck to the 24-hour limit that we've got at Manston. So there is lots that could be done, Jeremy, and it can be done.
One of the big news stories today, my friend, lives we put at risk if a doctor strike goes ahead. Multiple crises hitting the NHS, including this tsunami of flu. That's Wes Streeting who says that. Ministers have warned. Today, the BMA will announce the results of a members' vote over whether to proceed with a 5-day walkout from 7 a.m. on Wednesday. I have very entrenched views on this. I don't know what yours are, but they were given 28.6%. I have heard repeatedly about across years they had less, blah, blah, blah. I don't think it's any sort of good look as we approach a really important time for junior/resident/ whatever they want to call themselves doctors to be holding this country to ransom when we're skint.
Do you know what? For the very first time, and you know my loyalties obviously lie with the doctors, I absolutely agree with you. I absolutely agree. This is not a good look. This is not a good time. There is something very, very calculated about doing it when we know we're facing what they're calling the super flu. So we know cases are going to rapidly rise, especially up to Christmas. It's going to be a thoroughly miserable time for thousands of patients. And we have our key staff going on strike. For money, let's face it, they've already had an additional pay rise. So this does seem very calculated, and I understand totally where the junior doctors are coming from. They're looking at going back historically almost 20 years of underpay, but you can't fix that in this kind of method. And I really agree with you. For the first time, Jeremy, I think they are holding us to ransom.
And I think the danger is, I mean, people would always say, look, there's sympathy, and they do a great job and hours. I mean, I've had so many doctors, Aaron, say to me that they joined the BMA saying and believing that that was an organisation that would defend their rights and do right, but they've left in disgust because they believe there is a left-wing ideology. I think in terms of reality on the streets, nurses got 5%. Most people in the private sector wouldn't get 28% in 10 years, 20 years. I just think it seems too calculating, and I think you're right, and I think that any sympathy is going to evaporate because people, whether this flu hits as badly, I mean, old people like me have had their jab, so that's good news. But you know, Tom Dolphin, chair of the BMA, said, well, let's just cancel operations. That'll get us over the strike. I think that's appalling. What about people with cancer? What about all those people that need those ops?
And we're still dealing with the backlog from COVID, would you believe? So we can't carry on cancelling operations. We've really got to make priority to what's happening over this winter. A&E, and I can tell you from very personal experience, is absolutely rammed. Tell
him your story. He's a bloody doctor. He was in A&E the other day. Wouldn't answer. How long this is true. How long did you queue for?
15 hours. 15 hours I was in A&E, and you know, I wanted to pull the doctor card, I wanted to pull the shall I ring a friend, but I just felt morally that wasn't the right thing to do. There were so many people in the queues above me, and I was talking about 98-year-olds that were there that came in that had a fall that hadn't been seen. There were so many people that just had acute injuries. All of these things could have been dealt with by junior doctors, and we're now called resident doctors, but all of these things were minor injuries, minor illnesses, which they're absolutely key at helping getting us through that onslaught that A&E is currently under. Now, with this flu pandemic coming on, I think this is a really, really bad call from the junior doctors. I do not think that the resident doctors should be doing this strike at all. They already had an increase, let's say, from 38,000 to 44,000. They're looking for a progress up to £73,000. Can the country afford that? I just don't think we can.
I'm interested. I just want to go back to you in A&E, because I always want to ask hairdressers, why don't you cut your own hair? Why couldn't you doctor yourself then? Why couldn't you go, oh, that's what I need. I know what I need, so I'll write myself a prescription and then I'll go and take it.
Well, one, you can't write yourselves prescriptions. It's seen as a very bad call to do. But main thing is, as doctors, just like you, when you Google your symptoms and you message me and think you're dying,
oh my God, he's so right. Do you know what? Honestly, you've just let my secret out. I'm not that. I mean, but I've got lots of kids, and poor Aaron, like 3 o'clock, like, it's all right, Jez, calm down. I'll do it. It's fine. Don't worry. Mate, it's interesting to hear what you said. Just one other thing as well. Really appreciate it. And he's done so much good with his team over the years. Sir Cliff Richard revealing this morning he's been treated for prostate cancer. Recently, David Cameron as well. This is a big thing. I just wanted to ask you, are we hearing more about it because people are being more open about it? Is this the traditional men don't want to talk about being ill and this is an information situation, which is good? Or is it on the rise? From your point of view, Aaron?
I think both is actually true. I think one of the big reasons we're hearing about it is because very recently NICE decided not to screen for prostate cancer and decided not to offer that on the NHS. And I think, again, that's absolutely wrong. And there's some very big people who've come out to say they don't agree with that. I think for certain populations, especially Afro-Caribbean populations, especially populations with family history, we absolutely should be screening for this.
Yep.
David Cameron recently came out and said that's a real shame, and I absolutely agree. We really need to be offering this test. And I think this is, again, just more and more weight to actually put onto NICE to say, hey, this is wrong. We made the wrong decision here. Let's relook at this.
Prostate cancer is definitely on the rise, and people are certainly talking about it more. And that old thing about men who don't want to check themselves and all that, everybody knows my story. But in terms of going forward, you'd think it should be given the same attention. You've a new job. We want you in the mornings. The amazing Aaron Ghosh. Ghosh Medical Group is fantastic, and he is available to be texted at 3 o'clock in the morning if one of my kids is throwing up and I can't speak to a doctor. We'll shoot straight to Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona. From Arizona Morning News, Qatar in Phoenix. LaDonna Harvey, good morning.
Good morning, Jeremy. How you doing?
I'm good, sweetheart. Only a few minutes. You're up early. I appreciate it so much. We're all waking up to the news that Donald's suing the BBC and so hated of the BBC in the United Kingdom that everybody's going, yes, and I hope it bankrupts it and Donald can have all of our licence fee because we hate the BBC.
Well, he'd like to take all of that license fee, $10 billion for the edit. And we've talked about the edit before, which was the speech that he did before the Capitol riot, and then there was the Capitol riot. And the way that it was edited was absolutely deceptive. I mean, there's no question about that. When you're a journalist, as much as you might absolutely hate and despise a politician and love to, see them go down in a ball of flames, you can't do that.
No, you can't.
You have to use what they actually said. You edit for brevity. You do not edit to deceive, and they edited to deceive. Now, is he going to win £10 billion? No. He's not, but he's sending a message, and that's what he does. When he gets really angry with somebody, he sends a message, and his message to the BBC is, I'm going to make this miserable for you, and I'm going to make you look as bad as I can because you made me look bad.
I agree. I thought yesterday rather encapsulated the enigma that is the Orange Man baby. On the one hand, I support him absolutely for suing the BBC, but then Rob Reiner, the famous director, and his wife, this terrible, terrible double murder stabbing. The son's been arrested. We can't say any more than that. It's a big Hollywood story. And Donald Trump goes on Truth Social and said, he had Trump derangement system and he wasn't very good at what he was saying. Those are the moments when you think you've let yourself down there. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Rob Reiner, for whatever his politics were. I mean, I didn't even agree with his politics. I loved him as a director. Just because I don't like somebody's politics doesn't mean that I want something horrible to say, or I'm going to crow about it or try to point out that we disagreed. They're dead. They can't come back and say anything. And, you know, you take a conservative actor like James Woods, who was championed by Rob Reiner in one of his movies, The Ghost of Mississippi, and they could not be more different politically. And James Woods was like, hey, he was a good man. Politics does not make us terrible people. It doesn't, you know, it makes us disagree on politics. That's it. But we've turned into people who, for some reason, we just have to be mean about it. And that was mean.
I think that's symptomatic in your country and in our country. I think there's a massive division. I mean, you look at what's happening in Australia. We've been talking here about anti-Semitism and Jews fleeing this country because they don't feel safe. The world's at a very, very precarious moment. I hear about how difficult it is. I hear about the long hours. I hear about all of that. This is greed. If you put this in front of the British people, there will not be a shred of sympathy. I believe this is galvanised by a left-wing union, the BMA. Your thoughts, Roy?
Well, you're absolutely right. And, you know, when I was speaking to you the other day, I said I didn't think for one moment that they'd settle before Christmas. And you're absolutely right. They're hanging out for more pay. They think they've got Wes Streeting over a barrel. Here's an interesting statistic. You know that over the weekend they had a poll of their members to say, should they carry on with the strike? Well, 29,000 of them said that they would carry on with the strike. But that's out of a total junior doctor, total number of junior doctors of 77,000. So 29,000 out of 77,000 have decided to keep the strike going and keep Streeting over a barrel. The difficulty is he's got such a bad relationship with the BMA, and I know everybody's cross with him. I am. I don't agree with it either. But at the end of the day, I mean, you know this for sure with all the other programs that you've done. You have to negotiate, and you have to create a relationship with people you can negotiate with.
Yeah, but surely, I mean, I agree with that. But the biggest mistake that Wes Streeting made, and I like the guy, I've talked to him, right? He won't come on at the moment. Hopefully we can change that. If you go to the negotiating table and you offer 28.9% to make yourself look good in the shop window of politics, because we're in, the Tories, who I stopped listening to, are a disgrace. They didn't talk. We'll sort it. He's rolled over and been done one because he didn't ask for anything in return. I would have made it absolutely clear that there would be a ban on a future strike, that they'd have to do this in terms of productivity. I've said it myself, sign long-term contracts with the NHS or we'll pay for your training. None of that. It's about window dressing and yet again the Labour Party being bitten on the backside.
I think you're absolutely right. I said at the time when he gave them the 20 billion pounds, a lot of money, you know, when he gave them that pay rise, I said, there are no strings. I said, it's a 3-year deal. They'll come back in the 3rd year for more. And here we are again today. Somehow or other, somebody has to repair the relationship between the doctors and government. And Streeting can't do it. So, you know, is it beer and sandwiches at number 10? Is it ACAS? I don't know. But we have to talk. Because standing on the sidelines, bad-mouthing everybody and saying how terrible it all is and how greedy people are doesn't resolve the situation. And
no, I agree with that, mate, but I'm talking for work, you know, alarm clock Brits and hard-working Brits who haven't had in the private sector a rise of that magnitude for 10 or 15 years. And when you're getting up in the rain and the sleet and the snow to support your family and put food on the table and pay your bills just with Christmas approaching, you look at that and you know that the flu epidemic, you know the elderly can't heat their homes, you can't get an appointment, and they're asking for another 26%. I don't think it's fair to say standing at the side harping. I think millions of Brits have lost complete patience, belief, and I think they look at junior doctors as greedy now, and I don't think that's going to go away. I really don't, pal. And Streeting is to blame in part.
Nor do I. And the important thing here is that the doctors don't care about that.
Yeah.
They've abandoned their moral standing and they've used it as leverage. Because the one thing you can always say to a doctor, don't go on strike because patients will get damaged or something could go wrong or whatever. They're saying things go wrong every day anyway. We don't care. We're going on strike. That's the bit that's missing. These are a different type of doctor. You know, these are not Dr. Finlay in the old days at all. These are now young, militant doctors who've taken over a trade union, and we're dealing with a very different species.
Mate, it's always great to have you on. You should have run the whole NHS. We love you. Good morning to Ollie. How are you, Ollie?
I'm good, yeah. You okay?
Again, like veterans, like the Jewish community, I stand shoulder to shoulder with the farming community. This is a punitive and evil tax, isn't it?
It's just ridiculous, and I think he used the term necessary consequence when it's explained to him that people were taking their lives. The annoying thing is he keeps trotting out this data as well, that it only affects a quarter of farms. This has been disproved so many times, including by DEFRA themselves days after the budget, but that just gets buried and forgotten about. You know, NFU have done data, everyone's done data, and to say, look, you know, you're going to destroy farming, and people are taking their lives. I know of 5 or 6 examples now, and it's still
situations where people have taken their lives because of this tax, which, just to fill in to people, just put it in layman's terms for me, Ollie. If your farm's worth 3 million quid, what are they asking for?
Well, if your farm's worth 3 million quid, it's £600,000. And if you imagine if you're of an age where you've worked your whole life to provide for your children, and you know, no one owns a farm, you look after it for the next generation. That's the saying, basically. And if you've done that, and then at this point now, by being alive after April means that the government will take 20% of it, which makes it completely unsustainable. I mean, farming's on a knife edge as it is. So if that bill has to be paid, then suddenly, you know, the farm's up for sale. Who's going to buy it? Only big corporations will, because no family farm's going to afford to buy it. And there you go. You've lost UK agriculture, and you've lost lives.
And
crazy.
And the lives thing, I just want to part that 1 minute. You create the food that sustains the United Kingdom. It is the most, it's evil, right? What I don't get is why we're not going further in this conversation. Tell me if I'm wrong. I think this is a land grab by this Labour government. I genuinely believe this, to build those ridiculous wind farms and the like, because they're obsessed with net zero. I think it's almost treacherous. Yesterday, and I've got the clip now, our leader was at the liaison committee, and he was asked if he was aware that farmers, because of this punitive tax, 20% of the value of your farm, ridiculous, were being driven to suicide. Watch this response, it's outrageous.
Is the Prime Minister aware that some farmers who have terminal diagnosis now are actively planning to expedite their own deaths so they hit before April? Is he aware of that?
I've had discussions with a number of individuals who've drawn all manner of things to my attention.
Sorry, am I living, Ollie? I feel like, I know you're smiling, it fills me with rage. Am I living in some other universe? People are killing themselves, Keir Starmer, because your policy is ruining farmers' lives, ruining their lives. They cannot afford the tax that you're trying to do to pay for what? Illegal migrants in hotels and a bloated benefit system that allows people to sit on their arse and do nothing. Call it out for what it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm laughing because an MP said to me yesterday, you might as well debate with the talking clock. You know that.
Did he say clock? Are you sure he said clock?
Yeah, something like that, yeah. And yeah, it's just bonkers. The thing is, it's basic economics as well. You know, if you put farmers out of business, where's the food coming from? It's got to come from abroad. When it comes from abroad, that's money leaving the economy to pay for it. And unless we go on holiday, unless the people we were buying the food off come back on holiday to where we are, or buy what very little things we produce in the UK, that money is gone forever, and you're just dwindling out. We all know it costs more to eat out than it does to eat in. Yeah. And they're treating the country like we can just eat out everywhere. It's mental.
On a serious note, we talked about how this is driving some farmers to take their own lives. How do you keep going? What is the plan? What is the hope? What is the belief, my friend?
I mean, the only motivation I've got at the moment is to lobby the government and to get them to see sense and reverse this. I haven't got any motivation to farm at the moment, not after the drought we've had this year and the loss, and many farmers all feel the same. You know, I'm a relatively young farmer, and everyone I know, the heart's just gone out of the job. They're just thinking, what are we doing this for? You know, you don't do it for the money. You do it for your kids, and when the ability is taken away from you, why bother?
Somebody told me once, there's a great slogan, no farming, no food, no future. That's how the farming community feels. And listen, mate, one thing you will get from this station, from this breakfast show, you will get complete and utter support. I think it's an absolute disgrace. I think it's one of the most narrow-minded policies ever. I don't think it will possibly win. I think the community is far too important. And fiscally, I don't say this, Farage has said this, this can't go on for 3.5 years, mate. It can't. I don't care what anybody says. At some point, somebody's going to go, this can't work. This financially can't work. Our thoughts as ever with the farming community, Ollie, and I really appreciate your time. Boris wave migration numbers hit ridiculous highs. We say a very good morning. Our next guest, Robert Bates, Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, who's obviously got a very, very large electricity bill because the government charged far more because he's almost in the dark. Morning, Robert. How are you, son?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you, Jeremy. It's ambience. It's ambience. It's all about sort of getting that dark Christmas, midsummer feel.
You look like Zara Sultana in the dark outside H. Oh, you've gone dark again. Listen, Robert, great to have you on, mate. Thank you so much indeed. When we're talking about migration, actually, this is just a personal thing. And I was a real fan of Boris, but he is and can be accused of being at the centre of the huge numbers of people who have now come into our country illegally. And I know the left will say these are economic migrants. No, more and more are illegal. Britain needs an emergency census, pal. That's shocking, isn't it?
Well, first of all, I think a lot of people put their trust in Boris Johnson, and he threw it back in their face in the most outrageous, sort of effectively almost nation-destroying way with his immigration policy. And we are at the point now where so much has happened since 2021 with this open border experiment that I think it really is crucial for any public policy to be in any way successful that we actually know how many people are in this country. I mean, just to give you a sense of how bad the data is in this country when it comes to populations, we know almost next to nothing when it comes to nationality of individuals here, their religion, how many children they have, what languages they speak. We're effectively having to operate in the dark here. I would almost actually go as far to say that the Doomsday Book was probably a better administrative exercise than the way we collect data in this day and age. And Which is
really ironic, isn't it, when they want to bring in ID cards and they seemingly know everything about you, but they can't tell you how many people are in this damn country taking advantage, right?
Well, exactly. And I think when you see reports from supermarkets, when you see reports from water companies, the official numbers we're being told as to what the population in this country is are clearly understating actually the scale of the problem and the actual scale of the foreign-born population in this country in particular. I think when it comes to censuses, we do have a problem in particular with those from abroad and their completion rate. So I don't know how effective, without it being sort of really strictly mandated, any data collection or emergency census actually would be. It would, of course, give us a better indication. But there were just so many people living in HMOs, in sort of the black economy, that actually getting a full comprehensive picture is probably actually beyond the wits of the state.
But I mean, I don't disagree with you at all. I think you do such a great work at the Centre for Migration Control, but just hold fire a minute and think about that. Right? This country, and people go, you always criticise. No, there's much I love about this country, but we're being dragged down by, I don't know, DEI and just a lack of will and stupidity and idiocy, and we can't even tell you how many people have come into this country illegally. It is utterly awful. Here's a story for you on the back of that as well. Migrants break benefit rules 200 times a day, Robert. Almost 200,000 penalties were imposed on foreign nationals claiming universal credit over 2 years. Also, more than 300,000 young people are claiming out-of-work benefits with no requirements to look for jobs. Illegal migrants breaking the benefit rules. Hey, shock, horror. Here's a question for you. If we can't carry out a census to discover how many illegals are in this country, how is it that they're allowed to sign on? Don't we have the information from them then?
Well, that would require the left hand to know what the right hand is doing. And of course, that is, again, as I say, beyond any capability that any civil servant actually seems to demonstrate at this point. I think this is a particularly insulting story because this is not just illegal migrants, this is legal migrants as well who have normally come here to work and to help build up the economy. Rather than do that, They very happily signed on, become idle, stuck the hand out and said to the state, money me, please, give me some money. We've, of course, given it to them because that seems to be just what the British state does at this point. And then they've not even had the decency to turn up to a meeting every couple of months to say, look, I'm still here, I'm doing a little bit of job searching, I'm sort of looking on LinkedIn every couple of days. They've not even got the courtesy to the host population who are effectively paying their way to do that. And I think this really just shows that we have become such a soft touch when it comes to dealing with foreign nationals, and we require so little of them that actually it's not migrations and it's not migrants that are coming to make Britain a better place. It is now Britain effectively serving the needs and the lifestyles of foreign nationals. We've got the complete inverse situation as to what we should have in this country.
Serving the needs and the aspirations of a migrant population. You put that so well. Very quickly, the other story, Donald Trump the other day, quite vocal actually, this was a good thing, when he said that Europe's decaying, it's got no control over, you know, the numbers of people going into different countries illegally. It seems to be helping. His words were, everybody but the indigenous population. Yvette Cooper kicking back overnight saying, amongst other things, which sort of sticks right to my crap, our diverse communities are what makes me proud to be British. Have a listen, have a watch quickly, Robert. Yvette Cooper yesterday.
If you want to talk about the centuries of civilization that we have to be proud of, our cultural industries are stronger than they have ever been. We have strong and diverse communities who are proud to be British, who are an incredibly important part of the kind of country that we are, and we celebrate that and will continue to do so.
To me, Robert Bates, if people come to this country and enrich us, that's great. I always want to make that point. But I fail to understand how the BBC, most of the media and most of this government, if not all of this government, don't understand that if you allow unvetted illegal people into your country, they will take advantage of whatever, whether that is, sorry if people don't like this, a benefit system, young girls, whatever it is, there's crime and whatever. We need to know who these people are, and we need to do it because the British people, this is genuinely true, have really had enough. They have definitely had enough.
I mean, that was a load of guff. This idea that sort of migration built Britain, we're culturally enriched because of it. I mean, this is the country of Wordsworth, of Shakespeare, of Dickens, of all that kind of stuff. And we did that without needing 3 million people to come in 5 years. This is a complete inversion of history. It's a deliberate attempt, I think, to sort of unmoor us from actually what we were as a nation and to just have us as free-floating atoms where we're grateful because we've got we've got sort of chicken tikka masala and all that kind of stuff. I think it's the complete wrong way around. And Trump is absolutely right that if we don't know who we are as a people, how the heck are we going to go forward as a people? And this is actually the whole point of what the mass migration debate is about. If you erode a country's identity, it doesn't know what it's doing effectively. It's just floating around trying to take triumphs from little things like sort of, more curry shops opening up. And I just think that is a really, really sad state of affairs. It's so superficial.
I go back to what I said. If people come to this country and enrich it and celebrate it and are part of it, fantastic. But if your whole reason for coming to this country, Robert, is because there are issues in your own country, you don't feel there are opportunities or you're not being treated well, my question simply is this: why do you then come to this country and bash almost everything that we have and try and implement your own ideology? It doesn't make sense. I wanted to bring you on to talk about this horrific story. Rampage Beast Cage. This is the horror of this man, a former Royal Marine, Paul Doyle, yesterday jailed for 21 years and 6 months for literally, we haven't got, there isn't footage, please God there isn't. He basically drove his car at supporters at Liverpool's parade, having won the debate. He was screaming obscenities. He hit 134 people, and thank God people weren't killed. I really don't want to see this is on footage. It's too disgusting. Pete, how do you make head nor tail of somebody like this?
Unfortunately, this will remain a mystery because the motivation of this crime is really not known.
No.
The man was intended to plead not guilty right up until the very last minute of his trial, when he changed his plea. That caught everybody off guard. And of course, yesterday he was sentenced. And I think, personally, the 21-year and 6-month sentence is probably about right, although I suspect people in Liverpool might take issue with me purely because of the numbers of people that were injured, and had anybody been killed, then of course that sentence would have been far, far greater. But there is one name now that must be mentioned, and repeatedly so. Daniel Barr, known to his mates as Dan, who dived into the back of this vehicle amidst all the carnage, amidst all the victims being created, and shoved the vehicle into park so that it couldn't drive anymore. An absolute hero of our times, who apparently is struggling following the events, and I would just like to wish him all the very best, and I hope he gets his full health back as soon as possible.
Completely agree with on that. The reason I wanted to talk to you about this Paul Doyle, is because I remember hearing it, and I will be absolutely frank, as I suspect many others felt, I thought, oh my God, it's a terrorist attack. That was ruled out. The guy doesn't seem to have a history of mental illness or have, you know, I don't know, there's so much madness in the world. The way it was written, Pete, it was like he just lost his rag because he couldn't get through the crowd and some red mist descended and all of a sudden he's driving at people. And listen, what's the right prison sentence? I mean, would you allow anybody like this out again? And actually, I think you make a great point about the hero, Dan. It's all well and good to say he's a hero. Imagine we ever hear on this, oh, I'm stressed. Imagine the mental impact of trying to stop that guy and seeing the faces of those people as they hit the windscreen. Some of I mean, this footage will never be shown, we hear, because it's just so graphic and so awful. People with broken limbs, maimed and stuff like that. It's a miracle that nobody died. But I just want to ask you, as a former police detective, you can't legislate for that, can you? How can you legislate for that?
No, it remains entirely motiveless and a mystery in so many regards. But of course, what some people fall into the trap of is they try and rationalise the actions of an irrational mind.
Yeah.
And you can't actually do that. Sometimes you just have to say, when it's, for example, a completely senseless murder where a motive can't be established, and it seems to be the thinking only of a mind deeply, deeply disturbed. Well, don't try and get into that mind. Deal with the facts, present the evidence, put it in front of the court, and let the court do their business. And that's exactly what Merseyside police did here. The prosecution was brought fairly swiftly and very professionally, and for that, and I'm sure many people are grateful, but it is going to remain, unfortunately, one of the mysteries of our time.
Because it's like I expected to hear that he'd be sectioned, that he would, you know, he had severe mental health problems, but he's being sent to jail. They say that he simply got angry. Imagine it's just weird, mate. Listen, again, thank you for everything. I know you've got a busy year next year. You'll be joining us on the show remotely because the tour is happening in 2026. Peter Bleksley is going to 4,000 dates. How many dates are you doing, seriously?
140 theatres around the UK.
Tickets where, PB?
peterbleksley.com. First opening night, 8th of January, the Churchill Theatre in Bromley. What a name for a theatre.
If Cheryl can go from feckless benefit claimant to entrepreneur, then so can many others who swell the welfare bill. You say this is the benefits queen who has turned her life around. 15 kids, was getting something like 60 grand a year, and now is in a position where she's a successful entrepreneur. Tell us your thoughts on this and what lessons, Ross, you think there can be to others who are on benefits.
Yeah, well, this is a woman called Cheryl Drew, who's now so very successful, owns a couple of beauty salons in North Wales. But 10 years ago, she was featured in a Channel 5 documentary called Britain's Most Shameless Mum, which rather says it all. At the time, she had 12 kids, living off about £60,000 worth of state benefits, was filmed going on holiday to Spain and buying one of her kids a little quad bike and so on. And, you know, what happened 10 years ago, then the Conservatives, of course, stopped the child benefit. They put the child benefit cap to 2 children. And, you know, while the sort of large sections of the Liberal left were sort of outraged about it, Cheryl seems to have reacted in a very, very different way and said, well, look, you know, ask herself, well, why don't I use some of the guile that I've been using in claiming benefits and actually start a business, put it to some positive use, which is what she did. And what are you saying? Well, you know, the problem we have with the benefit system, I mean, we call them lazy and feckless sometimes, and that rather misses the point, because, you know, in reality, they are people who choosing a life on benefits. They are reacting to, you know, the sort of choice before them, and in many...
Not everybody's making a choice, though. There are people on benefits who fully deserve those benefits because they're disabled or because they can't work. But you're talking about people who really actually could work but choose not to.
Yeah, of course, there are people who genuinely need to be on benefits, people who are genuinely long-term sick, and some people who just genuinely cannot find a job. And, you know, I'm not sort of trying to remove benefits from them, but I'm just saying that there are a large number of people. You just look at the number of benefit claimants, how it's going up and up and up, and we now have 6.5 million people on out-of-work benefits, which is more than we had in the early 1980s, when all the heavy industries were closing and, you know, unemployment became a huge political issue. We got more people on out-of-work benefits now than we had then, and no, they're not all genuine. You think, well, the ONS asks people about their health. It seems, you know, our health is getting better. We're telling the Office of National Statistics that we're feeling healthier, and yet we've got more and more people on these sickness benefits. No, of course they're not all genuine.
Is this about an attitude to work? Is it about the government trying to solve everybody's problems? I just wonder if we can get to the core of this issue, Ross, because your piece is really good today. And I do wonder, you know, we look at this other story today, I'm sure you've seen it, about misogyny lessons for 11-year-olds. And I just wonder, I mean, I'm not against them per se, but what I am thinking, in so many things we hear about, you know, kids who come to school who aren't toilet trained, kids who are being given breakfasts at schools, which, I mean, I don't want any kid to go hungry, but it used to be that was the responsibility of the parent. And lessons about misogyny, you know, are we just sort of outsourcing quite a lot of parenting here? And actually, when it comes to benefits, are we simply saying, well, the government are going to solve my problems? I'm not a person who's going to, if I can, go out and work and do everything I can to get a job. And there's some people who can't, and I totally get that, and it's incredibly frustrating for people who try to get a job and cannot. But someone like Cheryl has turned her life around, and many others can too.
Yeah, if you take responsibility away from people, then they, you know, you nullify their, you know, their efforts to look after themselves, to help themselves. And if you're feeding them large quantities of benefits so much that it's actually more profitable for them to remain on benefits than is for them to go out a job, if you go out and get a job, if you put that sort of negative incentive in them, they will stay on benefits because they're making actually a logical decision. You know, if you think, well, I'll go out to work and I'm actually going to be worse off, then you know, you're going to remain on benefits, aren't you, unless you you know, have great aspirations to get beyond the sort of level of a basic job. And, you know, it's a general rule that when the state tries to step in and organise our lives, pay for everything, take, you know, responsibility, you know, try to sort of bring up children under what should have been parental responsibilities like potty training and so on. You know, you're stopping people helping themselves, and that's the real problem. We saw it in COVID, didn't we, when, you know, the state was sort of trying to micromanage our lives, and people started behaving in weird ways.
Well, you're absolutely right, and you know, you've written about that, and one thing I know you've written about a lot as well, including in your book Not Zero, is about net zero, is about the amount of money we're putting into that. The Conservatives this morning saying that they want to put 50 billion quid if they were in government into defence. Now, Labour say that they took 12 billion out of it in the first 5 years in office, and that's the criticism they put. But as a general principle, presumably, Ross, you'd be very happy to take the money earmarked for net zero and put it into defence.
But yeah, we certainly need more to be spent on defence because, you know, for the past sort of 3.5 decades, we've been living on what we call the peace dividend, or what we used to call the peace dividend, the idea that war was now unthinkable and therefore we could spend a lot of the defence spending on social programs instead. Well, you know, Ukraine has woken us up from that, and we are going to have to increase military spending, defence spending, and but you know what matters is not just increasing the spending, but how we spend it. And you know, you look at some of the sort of defence spending at the moment. Some of it is very misconceived. We've been, you know, buying sort of personnel carriers which didn't actually sort of work. And the army and the air force have a sort of net zero program, and the air force is sort of, you know, trying to sort of decarbonize its operations by 2040. Well, you know, do you think, well, is that really a priority? I mean, do you think that
surely defense of the realm?
Yeah, is Vladimir Putin going to have the decency to call off his tanks for a while to allow us to recharge our electric tanks?
Electric tanks. It's a terrifying thought, actually. Alan Mendoza, who is Executive Director of the Henry Jackson Society, is also Reform UK's Chief Advisor on Global Affairs. Alan, good morning.
Morning.
We've heard from Zara Sultana. She is certainly in solidarity with those who are attempting at the moment to take their own life, to commit suicide in order to make a point about the Palestinian cause. Do you have any sympathy with them?
Well, actually, what they're attempting to do is to get out of jail. If you look at the conditions, they've said they want bail so they can get out. They want the ban on Palestine action to be lifted. So this is less about, you know, a point about, it's about coming out of jail right now. And as we know, they're waiting for trial. That's not how it works. Could you imagine if every person accused of a crime went on a hunger strike and said, "I'll only stop if you let me out"? Basically, of course we wouldn't do that. That's not how justice works. Justice works, you go to trial, you make your point of trial, you then are either found guilty or innocent. They appear to be wanting to avoid that at the moment, which is an extraordinary situation for the legal system and for the authorities in this country to deal with. You know, I think nobody wants to see anyone die, but I think, you know, we want to see them put on trial and see what happens then.
Certainly, and we don't want to prejudice a trial, and I know you wouldn't do that, Alan, but they're certainly accused of very serious things, which I'm sure they deny. Alan, just on Zara Sultana herself, I mean, we've seen some pictures on the screen there of her standing alongside people at HMP Bronzefield, where these hunger strikers are, campaigning with them, and people, not necessarily Zara Sultana, we don't know if she shouted it herself, but some of them talking about intifada, and that is something which both the Metropolitan Police and Greater Manchester Police have now said they're going to prosecute people for. What should happen in that case, and what should happen in regard to Zara Sultana herself, in your view?
Well, obviously I don't know what she's saying, so we can't, you know, make a judgment there, but the general point is clear. The police have belatedly, and I say belatedly because it was obvious to anyone with a brain a lot earlier, that you know, slogans like "globalise the Intifada" were incitement to violence, as opposed to random sort of peaceful, peace-loving things being said at these marches. Now the police have decided those are, at least in London and Manchester, they've decided those are an incitement. Isn't it about time other police forces followed? And I think the key to this is consistency across the police, else you do get two-tier policing. You get the idea that, oh, you can do certain things in certain parts of the country, not others. How does that make any sense from a delivering, you know, law enforcement point of view? So I think that, you know, very urgently, police forces around the country need to get on board with this new designation, as it were, and support the arrest of those who incite to violence.
I am very interested in one police force in particular, even on Somerset Police, because they haven't arrested anybody. They have certainly interviewed a man in his mid-30s. I think we can safely say it was Pascal Robinson Foster, who is the lead singer, I use the term loosely, of the music group. I use the term loosely, Bob Vylan, who shouted "death, death" to the IDF and has done that on a number of occasions, but particularly at Glastonbury at the tail end of June. I think they're running the clock down on this. Even on Somerset Police would deny that. But are they now going to say, well, globalise the Intifada is something we're going to arrest people for and we're going to charge them with a crime for doing so, but you can say death, death to the IDF and call for the death of thousands of members of a conscripted army? It's a very interesting point, and I think I'm actually going to, after the show, talk to Avon and Somerset Police and see what they think about that. I'll follow that up tomorrow. I'm on the mid-morning show tomorrow between 10 and 1. In the meantime, Alan, I just want to look at Jeremy Corbyn, and he raised the plight, as he would see it, of the hunger strikers at Prime Minister's questions yesterday.
Yesterday, the Minister of State for Justice declined a meeting with the representatives of a number of hunger strikers in prison at the present time. These are all remand prisoners. They're not convicted of anything. Since then, a further prisoner, Kazam, has been taken to hospital, as have others. Many people are very concerned about the regular breaches of prison conditions and prison rules in respect to these hunger strikers. Will he make arrangements for the Ministry of Justice to meet representatives of hunger strikers to discuss these breaches of the conditions that they're experiencing at the present time?
No. Prime Minister.
Well, he will appreciate there are rules and procedures in place in relation to hunger strikes, and we're following those rules and procedures.
So far, so Jeremy Corbyn, eh, Alan?
Well, look, again, you know, he's made an allegation. He's saying that the government's breaching its duty. The government, the Prime Minister has said it's not. So clearly, you know, the government has to follow regulations when it comes to these people. And I hope the government is, of course, following those regulations when it comes to these people. But it is curious that, you know, again, Mr. Corbyn's sort of main issue here is he says they're on remand waiting. They're not criminals. He's correct about that right now. But the key thing, isn't it, is to get them to trial so that we can ascertain whether they're guilty or innocent. So it's extraordinary that once again he's backing people trying to seemingly, you know, kind of get out of jail before that happens.
Just a quick word, Alan, on the report on the BBC website that explained the origin of the word intifada, but made no mention of the fact that over 1,000 Israelis and about 5,000 Palestinians died in repeated clashes and terrorist attacks between 1987 and 2005. After complaints from Jewish readers, the BBC changed the report, saying the word intifada was regarded by some as a call for violence against Jewish people. I mean, what planet are they on here?
It's regarded by everyone as a call of violence. I mean, because
that's what it means.
They like about it. They can claim all they want, but everyone knows. Intifada is a word that is established. You know, it's an armed uprising, an insurrection, as it were. There is no doubt about that. You know, some people say, for example, the word jihad. Some people will say, actually, that refers
including the Metropolitan Police, who said it had a range of meanings.
So, you know, and actually jihad does have a range of meanings, you know, but we know
what they meant when they said it.
They're not intending that, you know, it's not about the jihad of the mind, it's about something else. However, there's no doubt about intifada. Nobody's ever said it was a peaceful thing. Nobody ever said it was a spiritual struggle. This is absolute nonsense and an outright lie.
We also have this controversy about the BBC forced to correct a claim that intifada terrorists, or militants as of course they would call them, or fighters, were largely unarmed. I mean, why can't the BBC just get this right? Just properly tell the truth and give definitions that are accurate.
I think the BBC has an institutional bias in relation to these issues. I think they really struggle with these issues in terms of getting it right. These were the allegations against these people who are on remand are exceptionally serious in terms of attacks on police officers, etc. And why the BBC would paint a picture that is opposite to what the allegations are is quite beyond me. It seems to have this institutional bias against the Jewish community in many respects. It's almost anti-Semitic, and it's just another example of where the BBC get it wrong. But there's so many examples. I think it needs to be defunded. I'll be honest about that. I think the BBC has just lost its way completely.
Well, let me just give you the detail of this to our viewers and listeners who might just be waking up to this story. The BBC risking fresh allegations of bias after describing Palestinian uprisings in which thousands of people were killed as largely unarmed and popular. A report on the BBC website explained the origin of the word intifada, made no mention of the fact that more than 1,000 Israelis and about 5,000 Palestinians died in repeated clashes and terrorist attacks between 1987 and 2005. After complaints from Jewish readers, the BBC changed the report, saying that the word intifada was regarded by some as a call for violence against Jewish people. I mean, I just wonder, is it stupidity? Is it willful stupidity? Or is it anti-Semitism? Because it's one of those three things.
I think it's anti-Semitism. I think there is a bias within the BBC that's against the Jewish community. And there are individuals, presumably, within the BBC who are very, very pro-Palestine to the extent where they are biased. and not, you know, it's not that long ago. It's 5-10 years ago. I would go to the BBC as a neutral voice on whatever issue you wanted to analyse. But I don't visit the BBC website from one month to the next now, because it's not neutral. It's very subjective on issues like this and other issues as well. It can't be trusted. That's the sadness of where we are. This is a national broadcasting organisation.
Simon, on another topic, should 11-year-old boys be given lessons about what misogyny is and how to combat it? We've quite a lot of reaction to this story today. This is part of the new strategy about violence against women and girls. Jess Phillips, the Home Office Minister, talking about this morning. What do you think, Simon?
I think this is a really interesting story, actually. So, some of what's being proposed, it makes some sense, you know, educating young people to be, you know, to have the right sort of attitude in relation to gender and women and everything else. But at the same time, it does really stick in the gut that the government are on this campaign around violence, stopping violence against women and children and girls, and yet the reality is that these are the very people who oppose the national inquiry into the grooming gangs. And one of the key issues in all the reporting of this around young people and misogyny, all of the reporting, I haven't seen anything in terms of Islam and Islam's view of women, because that's a significant factor in how some people view women and girls, and that's not being mentioned at all in this all debate. I find that fascinating.
Well, we have invited Jess Phillips on the programme this morning. So far we haven't got a clear answer on that. If she comes on between now and 10 o'clock, I'll happily put those points to her.
Now listen, this is, I mean, you and I have talked seriously about Harry and Meghan for a long, long time. There is low and there is low. We all know the story, you know, I don't like this goldfish bowl. I don't like to be fearing, she said, for the press, and they're always after me, so I'm going to go with my husband to Montecito because I want privacy. By the time she'd landed, it had become obvious that they were going to sell their souls. Even this, by their standards, is pretty low. Prince Harry and Meghan have quietly auctioned access to themselves to the highest bidder, auction themselves as a way of raising money. It's said that tickets to attend a dinner with the Sussexes go for around £100,000 a plate as they use the company charity buzz to raise funds for their charity Archewell. Up to now, the charity has relied on anonymous wealthy donors, which has allowed them to make grants to their selected good causes. But yeah, so these two will now charge you $100,000, which I'm actually told is £75,000. I thought it was more, to have dinner with them. And my question to you, Belly, is there any level to which these two will not sink for £1?
Well, they need to raise funds for Archewell, because they had one big donation, I think, from one sort of a group. They need to find ways. Now, if they were fully paid up members of the royal family and working, this would be considered a no-no, because we've known and seen other members of the royal family get into a bit hot for sort of the access and cash for access. So this is deemed to be completely inappropriate. But as they are not working royals, I suppose the rules don't apply to them in this case. But it is still an unseemly amount of money to be probably told a bunch of word salad if they're giving their speech. But if people are prepared to pay it, market forces and all that, then you have to say, well, if that's what they can get away with, fair play. But it does seem to be a ridiculous amount of money to hear two people whose PR in recent weeks and months has been pretty shocking.
Shocking or disastrous. Colin in County Durham, Belly, has got this absolutely right. $100,000 to have dinner with Harry and Meghan. No wonder a dad never gets to see it, because he hasn't got the cash. Interesting, isn't it? Because if my dad was dying, I wouldn't be selling myself for $100,000. I'd be on a plane to wherever he is, the Philippines, to check him out. Her priorities, their priorities. I mean, we read about Harry wants to get back into the royal fold. Does he? Is that because... I don't know, but the whole thing, to me, I would be embarrassed to have them anything to do with the royal family. Now, I think on a daily basis, you talk about their PR... They just make mistake after mistake, man. It's beyond me. I don't understand it.
Well, and this problem around her father is the biggest PR disaster of all.
Yep.
Because she was trying to look like that she's the modern way to have Christmas through that hideous documentary that came out, you know, as ever at Christmas, and talking about the family. Well, that was blown apart by the news about her father. And more importantly, Harry has no relationship with his family. So they are the couple who should not be telling us about having a family Christmas, because they don't have one.
I couldn't agree more. And for me, the priority, you see her in that. I mean, we're playing it now. Don't put any sound on it, because I'm likely to leave. Or maybe do if you want me to. I don't understand. It's almost Keir Starmer-esque, actually. We wake up this morning to the news that Starmer is going to cancel the local elections, and you sit here, if you're me, and you think, are you utterly tone deaf to the British public? The silent majority, Belly, that have never really risen their heads above the parapet, but increasingly feel like they should. And I feel the same with her and him. I don't know if he's dumb, or whether he's still whipped, or he just goes along with it whilst trying to plough his own furrow. But she has a complete deafness to what is actually thought of her in the world, it seems.
Yes, she is convinced by her genius. And Harry may not be the sharpest tool in the box. So put the two together and you've got a problem. Because they don't listen to anybody. No. And if they, because the people they do have often disappear and say, I've had enough, and don't stay around for long. So I have to say, it's been a disastrous year for Harry and Meghan. But actually, more importantly, they brought about it themselves, because the decision they've made and the perceptions. You know, Harry's had all his problems around his charity work. And now, here we are with Archwell. They're looking to raise $100,000 a pop for someone to come and sit next to them or see them, come in, give a speech and go away again. Hope it's value for money, the speech. Yes, it's designed to raise money for philanthropic, I can't say the word. Anyway, for charitable causes.
I can't say that word. Philanthropy. No, I can't say it either. I'm going to make you feel a lot better.
There you go. Thank you, Jeremy. That's a change. So I'd have to say it hasn't been a good year. But, fine, it's to try to raise money for Archwell. But
what does Archwell do, though? What does Archwell mean? What is that? Was it charity?
It's a charitable foundation. They give money out to their good causes. So it has, and you can't just set up a charitable foundation. It would be investigated if they're sort of keeping the money, and there's no suggestion of that. No. But it's not raising as much money as they would like.
Maybe it's not raising as much money because people think they're hideous, both of them. But you make a...
I think that's the point.
I mean, you talked about him. I forget the charity that he set up, Lesotho, that was all about Diana and her, thrown out, and, problems, and fell out with this person, her and her father. And you made the point about how people who go to work for them don't stay. You wonder whether they just can't put up with it, or at some point they go, this doesn't look very good, get out the door. But yeah, I think they're a lost cause. And then you balance that against, and I know I'm soft on her, Iron Kate and William. They released their Christmas card, just a beautiful family doing their bit for this country. I mean, the two could not be any further apart. And I believe that Harry's trying to ingratiate himself to his father. His father is apparently recovering. I don't know the truth behind his illness or whatever, but I can tell you one thing for sure. When his brother becomes king, he won't be able to ingratiate himself at all, because William has he attaches real value to what he sees as the history of the royal family and how one should be behaving, doesn't he?
Well, he does, and actually, if you look at this photograph, it's taken in Norfolk in the spring. I think they had a sort of big family photograph day. But it's interesting. We see the children. We never see Archie and Lilibet. It's for some, there's a sort of game that Harry and Meghan play there, and that probably entitled to. But it's very informal, this photograph. Yeah. And in a way, that's very much William's mantra. He's not one for all the pomp and circumstance. It doesn't like the sort of always feeling that you've got to be in your best bib and tucker whenever he's around or whenever he goes and does something. He wants to, as you've seen in some of the interviews he's done, he tends to be in a much more, dressed like you and I as we go somewhere.
Scruffily.
Well, in my place, it's definitely scruffy. William will always look a little bit better than that, because he probably has access to a few designer clothes. But more importantly, this informal look is something he wants, because he feels that's the tone that will resonate with the British public, rather than seem to be distant. And this family photograph, it just looks like any other family having a nice day out in the countryside, and smiling away.
I just get the feeling with them, they don't try and force it. There was the old man always gave me that cricketing analogy. You know, let the ball come onto the bat occasionally. You can't knock everything out the park, can you? The truth about them is they just look like a happy family with loving kids, right? That's the truth. And
tell that to the English cricket team that try and actually play it properly. But your father's advice would have been very good there. But that's the problem. But no, that's good for the royal family, particularly for Harry, for William and Catherine. They do want to have this feeling that the public can resonate with what they're doing. And a photograph like that looks perfectly. It looks as if they are having a really good time. Okay, lovely countryside in Norfolk, but it is a very informal photograph, very much the tone of what the Prince and Princess of Wales want.
I have to tell you, done this for a while, I don't think I've heard such outrage as there are from our listeners and viewers this morning. Front page of the Daily Mail, Labour running scared of voters. Nigel Farage in The Sun calling it a banana republic. Yesterday we saw this insipid, woolly performance where our Prime Minister went on Loose Women and talked quite rightly about misogyny. We'll come to that, but failed to mention that he'd written to local councillors and given them what seems to be to us, you'll tell me more, the opportunity, James cleverly, to not have elections next May. And the overriding impression of the Talk viewers today is very simply this. This is our democratic right that's being taken away from us for political ends. And it is an utter, utter disgrace, is it not?
This is completely unacceptable. It's as simple as that. In the past, where elections have been delayed, it's been because of like major conflict or during COVID, very, very temporary because of an acute threat to the country. Last year, Labour said that they were going to delay the local elections 1 year because they were in the middle of a massive reorganisation, a reorganisation that they chose to do on a timetable that they chose to set with structures that they chose to impose on local government. Up until 2 weeks ago, they were still saying these elections were going ahead, because we've been asking over and over again, are the elections in 2026 going to happen? Are they going to happen? We kept asking. 2 weeks ago, they were still saying yes. Then suddenly, on the last day of Parliament, before it splits for the Christmas recess, they tried to sneak it out in the hope that no one would notice, and it stinks. And the Conservatives are really clear. These elections should go ahead.
And this is a really important question for me because interviewed Kemi a couple of weeks ago and start to think that the Tory leadership and shadow cabinet are starting to be a bit more on the front foot. She came out immediately, James, yesterday and said this isn't happening. I put this to you, though, because I believe that the silent majority in this country, it's becoming more and more obvious that they've realised their voice can be heard. If any Tory council was thinking, just hear me out, oh, we'll just go in cahoots here because, you know, we're all going to lose our jobs and things aren't looking great. We talk Hampshire, Essex, Kent, you know, we could be battered by reform. I'm hoping, as and I'm sure many viewers are, that Badenoch and the Tory leadership will say to those councils, no, listen, even if you lose, we will get more respect long-term from the British people if we allow the democratic process to take its place.
Yeah, well, I've spoken to many, not all, but many of the council leaders in the areas that have been named, and the message I've had over and over again is that they have no intention of cancelling these elections. I've not spoken to everybody yet, but that's the message that I'm getting back. The point is, you don't go into elections only if you think you're going to win.
Yep.
That's not how democracy works. Accepting defeat at an election is as important as accepting the victory at an election. It is the foundation stone of a healthy democracy. That is our position. If there are any councils that think they need to do this, obviously I will talk to them about that, but our position is clear. Elections are the foundation stone of democracy. Labour are trying to shift the blame onto local leaders.
They are.
But I think your listeners, your viewers, the readers of the papers that you quoted can see through that. This is Labour making these decisions. Labour are the ones running scared of democracy.
Couldn't agree with you more. Also, talking Labour, we have a migrant tracker on this show. 63,000 migrants have come into this country since Labour came to power 15 months ago. And unbelievably, this morning, we reached 40,600 this year, James Cleverly. It seems we've lost the, crush the gang slogan. It seems that we've had nothing put in place to deal with an issue that the Tories didn't get to grips with. You're going to say Rwanda, it could have been quicker. I want to go down a different angle. And this morning, and because you always struck me as quite a common sense guy, another story of an illegal migrant, somebody who's been convicted and been told is deported, getting to stay. This is a convicted Lithuanian criminal, has been allowed to stay in the UK despite being jailed for 2 years for a vicious assault. He's lived for 15 years, been ordered to be deported. An immigration tribunal judge argued that it's OK, he's right, he needs to develop a relationship with his estranged daughter, who's 15, who wants nothing whatsoever to do with him and never has. What are we doing, James Cleverly, in this country? It is ludicrous, man. What message does that send to just hard-working alarm clock Brits?
This is one of the things that really frustrated me, both when I was Foreign Secretary and I was Home Secretary. When I was Foreign Secretary, I negotiated returns agreements with a number of countries, and the one that we did with Albania was massively successful, reducing illegal migration from that country by 90%, 90%. When I was Home Secretary, I found it increasingly frustrating that perverse decisions, which were being based on the European Court of Human Rights decisions, were preventing us from deporting people that had no right to be in this country, which is why we, as Conservatives, have committed to leaving the ECHR. We have also got a work stream to make sure that we tidy up any and all loose ends that might come out from that, because it is totally inappropriate for the judiciary leaning on decisions from the Strasbourg court to basically override the democratic decisions of these of this country.
Yeah.
And the reason why that is so important is because it undermines confidence in democracy. And when you have that with the curtailment of freedom of speech that we're seeing from this government, when you see the delays and cancellations of elections that we're seeing from this government, when you see the decisions of voters being overruled like this, we shouldn't be surprised that British voters are getting more and more frustrated. I don't want to see that happening. I want to see a much better attitude towards democracy. But the way you do that is you make sure democracy works. And that means when the people speak, politicians listen and act.
I mean, I've said it for a long time, whatever the politician, that I do believe politicians in this country need to understand now more than ever, and it's a text that was sent to me several weeks ago, and I think I'll quote it forever, Jay, which is somebody said, whatever the colour of red, blue, whatever, of the government of the day, they need to understand that the silent majority have actually woken up and gone, we always seem to have allowed whatever to happen, but right now we're really struggling. We're struggling to pay for the food, stay with, just do all normal things. And we look at, and there's a word that keeps coming out, which is unfairness. And I think the silent majority have worked out that so much of what they see and hear, James Cleverly, is unfair. But listen, just one final thing, if I can. And again, I find myself agreeing with her absolutely. So he goes on Loose Women, Starmer, and talks about £1 billion being used to teach young men, young boys in school, to respect women, deal with misogyny, reduce sexual violence against girls. Absolutely, 100% agree. I'd have been sitting on Loose Women talking about the fact that he can't control our borders, amongst other things, and was cancelling elections. But obviously that was a political ploy. Kemi Badenoch comes out and says, rather than expecting teachers to do that, why don't you get parents to accept responsibility, and let's do something about importing or allowing young men from different cultures that don't respect women to come into this country willy-nilly. I think we all agree about the last one. I'm really strong on the first one, James. I don't know how many kids you've got. I've got 2 sons. It is not for a school to teach my sons what my old man taught me about how to treat a woman and be a decent human being. Really strong on it.
You're absolutely right. Now, we've got to remember, it wasn't all that long ago that Keir Starmer was struggling to even define what a woman was. So at least we've got some movement in the right direction there. I've got 2 sons. They're both in their 20s, and I'm very conscious that it's my duty as a father, not not Susie's duty, my duty as a father to be a role model.
Yeah.
When I was both foreign secretary and home secretary, I made violence against women a priority. So this is not something new. But also we've got to recognise, and let's look, for example, at the terrible case of Zara Sharif, the 10-year-old girl that was tortured and murdered in Surrey a couple of years ago. We see the report that's come out from that. She started wearing a hijab to school, very, very young, to hide bruises. And the teachers recognised that she was being bruised, but they were too scared of causing insult or being accused of being racist to raise this as a concern, and that little girl got tortured to death. So it's all well and good chasing headlines with gimmicks like this. Misogyny, sexual violence, violence against women and girls is important and needs to be addressed, but this is a headline-grabbing move rather than something which is really about the protection of women and girls. And Kemi is absolutely right. We have got to make it absolutely clear that in the UK, we do not accept the subjugation of women. We do not accept violence against women and girls. And that is true irrespective of your religion or your culture or your background. That is just the standard by which we expect everyone in this country to live by. If Labour were saying that, I would have a little bit more respect for what they're doing with regard to this most recent announcement.